Hello, welcome to Jay's Rock and Roll Stories. I'm your host Jay. We're going to be talking about Cosey Fanni Tutti. Cosey Fanni Tutti. And this is from her book Art, Sex, Music. She was born Christine Carol Newby and born in 1951. And let me just give you an idea of what the hell where are we going here with this. When I was like a teenager, you know, kids are into punk rock and you listen to punk rock bands and shit. And I had a couple of friends who were interested in what was called industrial music. So it's like just breaking all the rules and, and just going against the grain of creating sounds that, We'll definitely get more into it, but the main band that she was in was called Throbbing Gristle. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about, her early childhood, her upbringing. All of this, all the stories in this book called Art, Sex, Music is from her diaries. And she explains in the beginning of the book that she says it was a revelatory process. And it provided exactly what I needed, albeit a harsh and definitely not rose-tinted view of my past. So, all of the book is based on her going back and looking at her diaries. She talks about growing up in Hull, 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 England, which was actually the second most bombed city during World War II. I think the first was from London. She's living in a council estate during the early 50s. She's born 51. She's kind of like a daydreaming, imaginative child. She finds happiness and security with her mother, her aunt, her grandmother. Her father is kind of like a grumpy old guy. The dad, he's a fireman. He works in like rotation shifts. He might, like 1 week he's going to work at 10 p.m. and coming home at 6 a.m. So she has a grumpy dad, but she would find like a safe place in this area of the neighborhood called the Dump, which was just a location of bombed out buildings from World War II where everyone would just bring their trash. So there's like, couches and shit all over the place. And it was just kind of like a fun place to just hang out, run around in. There's broken glass everywhere. She also has fun seeing movies with her friends. She goes to the movie theater and she talks about seeing, Flash Gordon, The Lone Ranger, Three Stooges, like, they were called serials back then. She did this game where she would crawl on the ground with the friend while the movie's playing underneath the seats, and they'd be covered in ice cream and bubble gum and shit. And finally they would get kicked out by the ushers for goofing off. She says that growing up in the neighborhood Hull, you kind of had to be tough. She says one time she got beat up by another girl. She went home and her dad asked her about it, and she's told dad, "Oh, this girl beat me up," and he ordered her go back to her house and beat her up. So she goes to the girl's house, knocks on the door opens, it's the girl, and she punches her right in the face and says, like, "Never touch me ever fucking again." That was just normal whole behavior, she explains. All right, this episode is just a bunch of interesting little anecdotes and stories from her early childhood. One time, she was group of friends. They would get together and go to this old man's house, go inside, and he would give the kids treats, like candies and stuff, and all of them knew that he had this suitcase under his bed where they would go and open it and steal his money. Like, and she talks about how it was suspicious to where it's almost like he he planned it that way. Another time, she's about 7 or 8. She says she's riding her bicycle. She crashes it, and she's knocked out. And she comes to with a man like helping her up and giving her money. Another story. She talks about how she's in a forest playing with a bunch of friends, and they're running around, jumping off rocks and swinging on trees and stuff. And then one of the kids says, "Look at that man!" They look over. There's a man like masturbating, watching the kids and masturbating. She talked about she's like not understanding what the fuck is going on, But then one of the kids says, "Get him!" And so they're like throwing rocks at him and throwing branches at this fucking creep, and the guy runs off. Let's see. It's like a very happy childhood, like lots of just escape, especially when you have just like a father who's just really kind of just extremely strict, and he would threaten her. Like she had a rabbit as a pet, and he would say things like, you better do this or I'm going to kill your rabbit, that kind of crap. She would go fishing with her friends. They would catch fish on like a homemade bamboo fishing pole, tadpoles or those little fish, and put them in like a jam jar. And she talks about how it's childhood heaven. She had a great time. I like this story where this is a cool story. Churches around the neighborhood were never locked, like you go to them on Sunday, you go home. Like, why does it need to be locked? So anyway, she talks about how churches are open 24/7, and she and her friends would kind of break into these churches, and they're on their bicycles. They're running. They're racing up and down like the paths, and then in the pulpit, sometimes the microphone would be left on, and they're grabbing the microphone, hello, and like telling jokes and making fart sounds and stuff like that. And I think that's it's kind of cool because I think that idea right there kind of segued the future music that she would do, just breaking the rules. And here's my microphone. I'm gonna do something else. So they have fun doing that until one time someone called the police, and then the police came and they scattered on their bikes and stuff. All right. Got a lot of daddy issues. He's, as I said, threatened the rabbit. So her quote says, "I began to see him as an enforcer of my unhappiness. Yet I still wanted to please him, wanted him to love me because I really didn't think he did. All in the naive hope that I could receive his feelings toward me, although there were some happy moments with Dad. His orders and threats dominated and overshadowed my relationship with him, and ironically made me behave worse than I could have done had he been more reasonable and affectionate," which is probably not uncommon anyway. I mean, that's how it goes. I mean, I'm not defending the dad. I'm just saying. So around 1962, 1963, she's about 11, 12 years old. She's becoming sexually active. She's not having sex. She's a virgin, but she talks about how she messes around with boys, makes out, jerks them off or whatever. She's very fashionable. Like, okay, think about this. This is 62, 63. This is like, the fashion is mod. It's, that's the rise of the Beatles, Rolling Stones. So it's a very specific look, very sharp. One time she talks about how, she's getting off a bus, and she's wearing, where is it here? I wrote it down. She's very specific in her little outfit. She says she's wearing a mini kilt, like a mini skirt. She's got a black Beatles logo polo neck, Beatles stockings, and red and black patent leather kitten heel shoes. I think those are they're not high heels, but they're pointed, like sharp, like high heels. She's getting off a bus. She's 12 years old or whatever. And she sees this tan guy, no shirt on, mowing a lawn. It's Mick Ronson. Mick Ronson was the guitar player for David Bowie when it was Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars. And Mick Ronson sees her, stops mowing, and gives like a wolf whistle. So she's very into fashion. You know, she likes Beatles. She likes Rolling Stones. She has a specific look. And then one day she just realizes, like, I don't need to grow up this fast. Like other friends are having sex. She has friends at school that are sexually active. She's not. And she actually tells herself, like, we don't need to do it this fast. So she goes back to being like a tomboy, focusing on her school, art. She loves art. She loves science. She'll stay at home, just listen to the Beatles. She talks a lot about how she started seeing live acts. So she talks about how she saw live Rolling Stones, Walker Brothers, Dusty Springfield, Geno Washington, Moody Blues, Pretty Things, Roy Orbison, The Troggs, Marianne Faithfull. Damn, this is good shit. See that live, 62, 63. All right, one of these nights, after seeing, like, she says, after seeing a memorable band, she doesn't say which one, she enters her home, and her father, who is a very, militaristic, controlling, and, you do what I say, he hits her in the head for coming home late. But she showed no fear and would not cry, would not show that you can control me. It's kind of sad. She talks about how she sees Jimi Hendrix. She saw Jimi Hendrix live. So this is later. That's 66, I think. She saw Jimi Hendrix, Cream. Yeah, 66, right. Joan Baez, Bob Dylan, that's what she listens to. She talks about how she saw Jimi Hendrix live at one of those ballrooms. And it's interesting how I made a connection here, because one of her friends talks about how the friend was dating, what's his name? Nash from Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young and the Hollies. And but left Nash and went with Jimi Hendrix. And I read what's his name? Nash. What is his first name? Shit, I forgot. Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. Graham Nash. Forgot. I read Graham Nash's autobiography, and he talks about how he had this girlfriend that he was dating, really liked her, and then he went on tour with the Hollies in the States, and then came back to England and couldn't find the girl, and turned out she was dating Jimi Hendrix. That was Cosey Fanni Tutti's friend. Anyway, I thought I like it. I like when the spider web of rock and roll is all connected. She finishes school 67 or 68, and she gets 7 certificates. She's a fucking good student. Like, the father should be more like, you're kicking ass, And she wants to go to university to study, and she is perfectly qualified. You're the one. But her father says, well, your sister didn't go to university, so you aren't either. And that's really shitty. So she's made to get a job. And so she gets jobs in offices, like, eventually she does some work with scientists, mostly in like the office part. She talks about how there's like this gang, like when they go to see bands and stuff, they're called the Station Gang. And I just thought it was interesting how there was the leader of the gang was named Ray Harvey, and he was covered in tattoos, and he had a tattoo on his inner lip. And it was just kind of like a violent kind of street gang. She talks a lot about, in Hull, there was like skinhead gangs. Remember, we talked about how we're not talking about like, Nazi skinheads. Skinheads, the guys are into like ska and reggae and like wore the suspenders and shit. what are they called? Hell's Angels, Mods, and Teddy Boys. Like they're all warring in Hull. Like that's why Hull was kind of tough, because like you kind of had to be involved on a gang, and if you're not, you're still going to get your ass kicked anyway. Anyway, so she wants to go to school. She can't afford it. Dad's not going to pay for it. She has to find a job. She gets office jobs. She talks a lot about her clothes. She does a lot of partying, and she gets she gets like a couple boyfriends, and she does a lot of these entries in this book of like they're directly from her journals. This says 24th of December 1968, I nearly got bloody raped. And she talks about this story where she went a couple girlfriends and there's a couple guys. They all met up to go to like a show, see a band. And I guess there was a time when I guess the show was over. It was really late. Everyone was gone. The girls went into like the bathroom and while the guys were waiting. And when she and her girlfriends came out, the guys jumped them. The guys were like trying to get something. They're like jumped them. They're trying to, force it. But they fought off. She was able to fight it off. The friends fought it off. And then they were like, oh, we were just kidding. We were just kidding. But it really scared the hell out of her. She also says in her journal, this is January 1969, started 1969 a virgin, hope to end it in the same way too. ... I never made it. So she talks about her first love. She calls Steve B. She's not going to tell us who it is. Steve B. Handsome guy. They're into like doing acid, partying. They love music together. They go to this thing called the Plimpton Festival of 1969. The Who. Who else? The Who played. There was another big band. Oh, Pink Floyd. Yeah, definitely Pink Floyd. That's her band. That's her jam. She likes to do acid and listen to Pink Floyd. So she is at this festival, and they're doing LSD, and she talks about how she's in like a van and she's really high with her boyfriend Steve B. And she kind of jokes the story about doing acid, being really high, and they're sitting on this mattress, right? And they push on the mattress, and then like this like waves go in the air, and they look at the walls of the van, and it's just covered in dirt, but they see like different drawings and stuff, and they push on the mattress again, and like this gray mist goes up. The mattress is on fire. So people are like, what the hell? Get out of there. They pull them out. The thing's caught on fire. Maybe it's like a joint or a cigarette or something. It's kind of funny. So she is with, Cosey is with her friend Steve, or boyfriend Steve B, and two other friends. And it's a long, like, trip. Like, they're traveling in their van, and they go to a place called Torquay. Torquay, to score some hash. It's like a long trip. They go to a festival, they go to Torquay to score hash. The car that they're driving in falls apart, like just breaks apart, and it just kind of sours, like no one's really getting along. Actually, the two friends and Steve are getting along, but no one likes Cosey anymore. They I guess they're just pissed off at her or something, and the relationship ends with Steve B. So she talks about how when that van fell apart, like taking all this stuff out of the van, like their clothes and their suitcases, was just watching like the relationship piece by piece fall apart. And she says one time after that, when they got back home, like things were not good with Steve B. Whatever happened, it's just kind of soured, got too high and didn't like the, mattress in flames or something. Who knows? But one time Steve B's driving her home and it's silent in the car, like no one's talking, and they get out of the car and Steve B throws her to the ground and yells in her face, "You got something to tell me?" I don't know, like one of those moments where the silence is so thick, you know? But she says, nope, I got nothing to tell you. I got nothing to say to you. She goes home after this long trip of music and festivals, LSD, fighting with the boyfriend, breaking up with the friends and the boyfriend. And the father sees her just like, in you know, this, you got to figure this is a time when there's a big difference in the status quo of just, you know, square crew cut look versus mod hippie, like LSD, like, you know, the counterculture. So dad sees her and kicks her out. He's like, you're not living here anymore. You're out. So she gets kicked out, and she gets really into doing acid. She's hanging out with her friends. She sees Pink Floyd. She talks about how doing acid with her friends, when someone would, you know, get way too high, start tripping, they would have like this phrase that they used, like something like a safety word, a safety net to bring you back to zero, right? They would say, nothing ever happens. So someone's freaking out, oh my God, the sky is falling, nothing ever happens. Oh, you're right. You're right, sorry. Nothing ever happens. Bring you back down. One day at a party, she's tripping, and someone comes up to her and says, Genesis requests to see you. She's like, okay, whatever the fuck that means. And it turns out there's this guy named Genesis P. Orridge. That's not his real name. His real name is like Neil Nibson or some shit. We'll do that later. But Genesis wants to see you. And another person came up to her, some random person was like, Genesis is the most egomaniac, like selfish person I've ever met. So who is this Genesis P. Orridge guy? I don't want to go too much into who he is because I'm gonna have to do an episode on him. But anyway, he's a fellow hippie, lives in a commune. It's just a really intense guy, really selfish. So anyway, they end up hooking up. They end up becoming, well, from the outside you would say boyfriend girlfriend, but they have rules where, oh well, we're boyfriend and girlfriend. No, not really, but we're free to do whatever we want. You know, come on, we're human beings. So there's a point where it's like she's trying to get, this is 1969. She's trying to get in good graces with her father. So she's homeless. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm sleeping on friends' couches. I'm just doing acid, going to shows. I could do A, you know, straighten up and move back in with, you know, good old conservative grumpy dad. Or B, move into the styrofoam igloo that Genesis P. Orridge made that has underneath the kitchen table in the commune he's living in. I could bed with him. What would you do? Now, she goes with Genesis, right? So they're together, and this is, they live in the commune with some other friends. It's like a vacant building that they're squatting. She not collects, but she finds like some cats, and she adopts a dog. She takes care of animals. There's like 5 people living there, and eventually, like, it's like someone's like, dude, we need some money. So she's the one that gets the job, while everyone else like gets to play. I like her. She just seems trustworthy. She just seems like a good friend, you know? Like she wouldn't let you down. She's the one who's like, all right, I'll fucking get the fucking job at the factory. Everyone else can just get high all fucking day. They live in this place where the bathroom is in the basement. And it's just like, you know, it's like barely shit piss running through. So Genesis P. Orridge has been in several of these artistic groups, these collectives, and the one that they're starting now that Cosey's a part of is called COUM, COUM, and it's just sort of a group of artists who they come up with this thing. It's like a thousand and one words on COUM or something. Like they come up with these things like COUM is nothing but the truth. COUM is nothing but the lies. Like they have always like it's just this freedom of our artistic whatever you want, you know? They put on these shows, they put on these happenings like you know, like there's this like Cosey talks about one of her proudest shows was the audience had to go through like this tunnel, and there's like in one area there's one of the members of COUM playing violin, another member, the guy is in a coffin and like sitting up and throwing like offal, like intestine at you. Just madhouse, just no rules, but artistic as you can be, and they're really into mail art, just doing work and like sending it into the mail, and that's where she got her name. That's where Carolyn became Cosey Fanni Tutti. One of her artist friends somewhere in England sent her addressed to her Cosey Fanni Tutti, and she's like, I like that. That's where she got her name. And so the band, I don't want to call it a band. It's like a movement. It's a group. It's a thing. It's a club. It's a gang. It's just whatever we want to do and however we do it. There's no rules. You can just, I don't know. It's fascinating. I like things like that. When I was a teenager, I was in with a group of friends. Like we had something like that. Music, art, video, multimedia. So she lives with Genesis P-Orridge, and one time, the guy is, Genesis P-Orridge is, here's a funny thing. I had friends who listened to Throbbing Gristle, so they always mention the Genesis P-Orridge, and like, I always wondered, what the fuck are you saying? Genesis P-Orridge? I'm reading this fucking book, and it tells me that how he got that name P, like P period Orridge. So many people commenting on the fact that he loves eating porridge. I'm not joking. This was in this book here. He loves porridge, so he just took the name Genesis P. Orridge. But he's a pain in the ass. Like, okay, I like Cosey. I don't like Genesis. Cosey is like Cosey would be like, can you... Here, take my wallet. Can you just hang on to this fucking thing for a day? I gotta get out of here. Like, you would get it back. You give it to Genesis, he would say, "What wallet?" You know. He has tantrums. He throws stuff. He has all these rules. Like, I'm not your boyfriend, but we are in a relationship. And one time she goes out and has such a lovely time with friends and gets high and dances with boys and comes back. And he's like asleep in bed, and he's like, get out, like kicks her out. Ugh, he's such an asshole. So there is, here's homework for you. Look this up. You can see what I'm talking about. Go to YouTube and just write COUM. You can also write Cosey Fanni. Make sure you put COUM. Cosey Fanni Tutti and Genesis P-Orridge. You can see visuals of the kind of stuff that they were doing. She talks about how they opened for a Hawkwind. Hawkwind was like this crazy space rock band that had Lemmy in the band from oh god, what is it called? Motorhead. Fuck, Motorhead. The funny thing about that, you probably already know this story. I love that story where Hawkwind, they're so sick of Lemmy. Well, his name wasn't Lemmy at the time, but they're so sick of Lemmy because he is like a speedhead. He's like a speed freak. And the band is like a hippie band. They like acid. They like weed and stuff. So he's just so intense. They want to kick him out. How are we going to fucking kick this guy out? He's too intense. So one time they're on their tour bus. This is like 1970 or something. They pull over the side of the street on the country road because Lemmy has to take a piss. He gets out, takes a piss. They shut the door and they drive off. So long, sucker. That's the way he was kicked out of a Hawkwind. Anyway, they open for Hawkwind, and they have like just Genesis Peoria is just, saying poetry. There's a guy playing guitar. There's a guy playing violin. Someone playing bongos. Cosey Fanni Tutti is throwing like those packaging pellets, those styrofoam pellets everywhere. They got a fan blowing them everywhere, and the styrofoam pieces get in Hawkwind's gear and like fuck up their like stereo or their speakers and shit. Hawkwind comes up to the show after the set, and they're like, "Wow, man, you guys are weird. What kind of drugs are you on?" They're like, "No, we're completely sober. We're sober." Let's see. There's one time when, all right, so she talks about how she uses the word liberating. So, for example, what do you have in your bag? Oh, a bunch of fruit and bread and stuff I liberated from the store. What do you have in your bag? Oh, a bunch of books, and like records I liberated from the other store. Yeah, they do a lot of shoplifting. And one time they get caught, Cosey, Genesis, and a couple other friends in the commune. They get caught shoplifting, and they actually spend the night in jail. The mother comes and picks up Cosey, and they're released all at the same time. And the mother starts crying because she's thinking like she's like the mom was thinking that she's like fucking like all of these guys all the fucking time, and she's like, "Mom, I'm not. No, come on, Mom. I live with these guys. I don't do anything else with." So then the father refused to see her, and then there's another time they move out. This is 1970. She moves out of the commune. Her and Genesis are together though. It's serious. It's like she's towing the line, walking the fine line. She's normal. I mean, not normal like boring, but like functional, reasonable. Genesis is just all over the place. So they leave the commune in 1970 and they move into this old like this like weird Victorian house that's connected to an old cathedral and all these old cobblestone like roads. Like the rooms are all dark and stuff, and it's like a really, really cool place. I guess, man, I'll have to look it up again. I didn't write it down, but I guess it's like a historical monument. They're living in a historical monument. There was like some old guy who owns a couple properties and just let them live there, and so she cooks and she cleans, and Genesis works on his like art and poetry and stuff. So that one time they got arrested. They were let go. The father wouldn't see her, and the one time there was a little fire that broke out on the block where they live in this new like cathedral Victorian home or whatever, and the fire brigade. I'm saying fire brigade because that's what we say, the fire truck or the fireman. Fire brigade came, and guess who is part of that fire brigade? Her father. And her father didn't say a word to her. And she sums it up to like, if he were to like, engage with me, like me looking all hippie and crazy with my crazy clothes and stuff, he would have to answer questions from his fire brigade brothers. Like, who was that? What are you talking about? And he would have to explain. So he didn't say anything. And she talks about how he looks so frail and old. Yeah, that's a sad relationship. God. That happens a lot in rock and roll. God, everyone has a fucking issue with their fucking parents, man. Just try to get along. Anyway, so they live in this old place, and another time they talk about how she had to get an abortion. She got pregnant with Genesis because Genesis refuses to use condoms, and so she got pregnant, and she got an abortion at a clinic. I guess abortion was legal in that year, 1970, and it took a long time for her to recover. So anyway, back to the music artistic part. COUM is getting to be sort of taken seriously, and they're like they're given grants, like the Art Council of England or whatever you want to call it at the time would fund things for COUM. It's moving in the right direction, and that's where we're going to end it for now. So that was her upbringing, and the next episode is really going to take off with just strictly about music and art and stuff. But so far I like it. I think she's cool. Like I think she would be a cool friend. She would you dependable. You can count on her. So far so good, Cosey. We'll see what happens in the world of rock and roll. All right, everyone, thanks for sticking around. It's been a while. I haven't seen you in a while. If you like this episode or you like the podcast, give me 5 stars or write a review. Or if you want to send an email, send it to jaysrockandrollstories@proton.me. Till then, see you next time for Cosey Part 2, and I bid you adieu. See ya. Hello.